Welcome to the Boneyard. This is a podcast about Mythgard. This is episode 10, limited edition. My name is Flake, and I will be your host. I'm joined, as always, by my co-host, Mr. Mark Theus.
Absolutely, Flake. We're happy to bring you another episode of the Boneyard, the milestone 10 episode. We made it, and we want to start the show by thanking our sponsors, Team Rankstar, Inked Gaming, 98.3 Media, OP Seat, and all you beautiful listeners. Thank you so much for making this show possible.
Yeah, I mean, 10 episodes and possibly even 10 listeners this time. That's damn good, right?
One per episode.
Yes, that's an averages to one per episode. But Mythgard has entered the open beta with a lot of great modes of play ready to go, straight out of the box. There was 2 versus 2. It's a popular format, but what many often overlook is the appeal of limited format, or in this case, draft. Now, on this episode, we will delve into the world of limited play and also discuss an upcoming tournament called the Gem Wars.
Ooh, that's right, and we will be recruiting Calebovitsch, streamer and draft expert extraordinaire, who will help us cut through the nitty-gritty of Mythgard's limited formats.
And you know what, Mark, there is always a bigger fish. So let's play the music and let's enter the Boneyard. So as always, we start with the state of Mythgard, which is not exactly a state of Mythgard yet. I know, you've heard this 10 times probably by now, but there's no meta breakdown yet. You know the drill. Once we get some meta snapshots, we will be breaking them down for you each week. Until then, I guess we can all just kind of continue to hate on aggro decks as a community. Does that sound fair? I think that sounds fair, right, Mark?
Yes, very fair.
Okay, perfect. So that's it. There's your meta snapshot. Flake hates aggro. That's essentially it. Book it, wrap it up. It's a to-go order. Easy, order up. All right. Now, the other part about this is that there are other game modes in Mythgard. It's not just
say it isn't so.
It's
say it isn't
true,
so.
Mark. I know,
God.
but now in order to tackle this, I'm calling in some help here. One, Calebovitsch, and the first thing I'm going to ask Caleb is basically the proper pronunciation of the name, because I don't want to look like a fool more than I already look like. But welcome, Caleb. Thank you for coming on the Boneyard, my friend.
Thank you for having me.
And I guess the first question again is, can you give us the proper pronunciation of the name so I don't mess it up?
Yes, excuse me. Caleb.
Perfect. Nailed it. All right.
But if you want to do the full one, you can just call me Calebovitsch.
Calebovitsch or Caleb,
exactly.
One of the two. All right, I'll take that. I mean, that feels good for me. Now, you are one and who is very intimately associated with Eternal. Is that correct?
Yes, I am.
Well, welcome to the Boneyard and Mythgard podcast, mofo. We are taking you out of your element just to sort of shake things up. But
oh, no.
I don't think that you'd be too scared to talk about cards in general, because I assume besides Eternal, you have a pretty vast background of CCGs, right? So why don't you hit us with a little bit of what your whole pedigree is in terms of CCGs? What's your background with card games?
Okay, I'll start with saying what my background is not. Because on the last episode with Waifugate, you said that almost everyone who is coming into Mythgard has some background in either Yu-Gi-Oh! Or Pokemon, whereas I have zero connection to any of those two games.
You are definitely unique in that sense, for sure. I think everyone but you. But hey, aces for doing your homework and actually listening to the previous episodes. But you are the unique one, Caleb, for sure.
Yes. The CCG story started 20 odd years ago with something called Doom Trooper. Are you familiar with the Mutant Chronicles?
I have not. Yeah, that's a new one for me. And I like to think that I know a fair share of card games. Like even
maybe it was more popular in Europe.
Possibly. But you said 20 years ago. And I mean, that's when I started playing card games very seriously. And I know so many weird, obscure card games, but I've never heard of that one.
I mean, it was 95 or 96 where I dabbled in some Doom Trooper, Dark Eden, and a bit of Decipher's Star Wars.
Yes, yes. Thank you, God. Someone else who played Decipher Star Wars game. I have
one or two, literally 1 or 2 games because it was not my cup of tea.
Damn it. Okay.
It also took forever to play one game.
But I know about it. Do know about it. Well, if it took forever, then they have translated it to any stretcher game, right, Flake?
Yeah. That's why I like it. That's why Star Wars games, I'm not even kidding you, sometimes I would have to leave my friend's house and come back the next day to finish it, because there's some of those games would be exceptionally long. And that's why I like stretcher decks, because they They're nostalgic for me to a degree.
Okay. Well, afterwards in '97, a friend has shown me Magic the Gathering. So that was my big dive into card games. I mean, I have dabbled in some 90s board games like Talisman and Robin Hood and Fury of Dracula and AD&D, not a board game, but an RPG. So yeah, there was a lot of stuff going on there for sure. But when it comes to card games, the breakthrough was in '97 when Tempest came out. So I remember that just when I was going through high school, I was playing casual with some friends. But the thing is, we live in a small country. We live in a small town, in a small country. Yes. No boosters almost anywhere. There was one shop. There was one shop that had booster, that magic booster, that had terrible price for magic booster.
Can I ask where you're from or where you're located?
I'm located in Poland. No,
okay.
Just kidding. Middle-sized city that did not have any FLGs whatsoever. I mean, there was one kind of an FLG, and they had overpriced booster packs for Magic. But I mean, we bought some stuff, and we were just playing casually for a year or two. But then someone started making local tournaments in Extended. I don't know if you remember such a format.
Extended as in terms of in Magic, right? You're saying
in Magic, yes, still Magic.
What time period were you playing these tournaments in?
98, 99.
Okay, so yeah, this is well before I knew much. I mean, now we know that there's modern and the new Pioneer format, but what exactly is Extended format?
Well, Extended was just a lot of cards, but without some of the first few expansions, without alpha, beta, etc. So it was that to standard is something that right now is modern to standard, I would say.
It sounds a little bit. Yes. It sounds like it's like a first iteration of a standard format, right? Because
of an extended format, of a modern format.
Okay, but I mean,
because standard was standard back then.
Okay, so there was still a standard. Okay, this is very interesting for me because you were there at the part of the sort of the ground floor of Magic and playing in that tournament.
I don't remember right now, but I think it was from Revised or something like that. I know duels were allowed.
Okay.
The original duels. Anyway, so after some casual play, there was some tournament play, local tournament play. Then I started going to other cities to play in some other tournaments, and oh boy, I like that. I like the competitiveness of that. I mean, even back then, I think I was more of a Johnny than a Spike because, and I believe you'll like it, Flake. Because one of my two favorite decks in Extended back then was either Mono Blue or Blue White Stasis with Howling Mines.
See, this is a very different approach for me when it comes from Magic to something like Mythgard, because you'd think I would like these kind of counterspell stasis kind of prison style decks like Blue White, like Azorius type of those win conditions of just stalling and capturing and imprisoning your opponent's cards. But that was definitely something that I hated so much in Magic, but I'm glad to hear that that's something that you embraced.
Well, Magic can really teach you how to say no.
Oh, you know it. The
no.
Blue nope. Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, and it was Magic from then on. When I went to college, it was more and more competitive, attending national championships, European championships, a lot of Grand Prix in Europe, but I also qualified for a couple of Pro Tours, qualified for a couple of World Championships as part of my national team, etc., etc. And that was from '97 till 2009, and then I quit cold turkey.
My gosh, I cannot foresee myself ever quitting card games. I've quit specific card games. But I mean, Mark, I don't know about you, but like we've played so many different card games. Could you ever imagine yourself like we
walking away from CCGs? I walked away from specific games.
No,
yes,
not CCGs. I'm talking about Magic.
Oh, okay, just so Magic. Okay.
No. I myself couldn't walk away from games either, unfortunately or fortunately, whichever you want to look at it. But yeah, I quit Magic cold turkey for a couple of reasons. But then, I mean, I was already into modern board games, so that was where my passion went for a time.
Did you ever anticipate that these board games? I mean, you quit Magic and whatnot, but there are a lot of board games, and I think that there was a big board game boom that occurred in the past 5 years, where there was just this influx of very high level, very strategic board games, stuff like Settlers of Catan, and there was always Risk that it involved. But I think
no, those were like 20 years ago. Those two titles, 15, 20 years ago.
Right.
So
but I mean, like
the older ones.
These were like exactly. These were the
pioneers.
The beginnings, exactly, the pioneers of that genre, where you can take board games and almost eliminate the dice rolls from for a certain degree. Obviously, Settlers of Catan and Risk involves dice rolls, but there is more of a skill element to it, and a negotiation element to it, and a strategizing element to it that determines winners. Do you ever, and I know this is a little bit of a sidetrack, but did you ever anticipate that, or did you ever suspect that these board games that you ventured into would have competitive, like you've been to the competitive Pro Tour sort of circuit of Magic within your own region? Did that exist for board games, and did you think that would be something that you'd be interested in?
I mean, I was interested if something like that would have happened, because I still had that competitive itch, but there were none, at least none in Poland. None of the. I mean, there were some championships for Catan, etc., but not the games I was interested in. Yeah, I had that itch, but there was nothing, according to when it comes to board games, at least in my area.
So how did it get to Eternal eventually?
Well, after some, I mean, I'm still playing different kinds of board games till this day. But yeah, after a couple of years of just different video games, I ventured in. Well, to be honest, I think it was the same friend who introduced me to Magic. Told me about something called Hearthstone. So I had that phase for sure. Before Hearthstone, there was also something called Might and Magic Duel of Champions. Do you know that one?
I've heard of it. I've never played it. I mean, obviously, Hearthstone is. I think everybody's played Hearthstone.
Yes, but before that was Might and Magic Duel of Champions, but unfortunately it died down, and that is very unfortunate, because it also had a lot of placement. You had a grid of 2x4, where you had like four melee, 4 spaces for melee units, 4 spaces for ranged units. If you had flying units, they could be either up front or in the back. It had all the flavor from Heroes of Might and Magic, all the factions from I believe it was the 6th edition of the computer game. Something like that, and it was very, very deep, but unfortunately it just died to the ground. Afterwards there was Hearthstone, and I tried to do a lot of arenas. I built my whole collection as a free-to-play from arenas around the time that there was only the core set in Hearthstone. So even then I was very focused on limited, as I was in my Magic days. Yes. I believe I still have my results written down from my first 50 or something like that arenas in Hearthstone in a notebook or another.
It seems like you missed the goal, like the age where limited in Hearthstone was actually something that they tracked. There was almost like a ladder for limited, where they would eventually publish statistics based on win rates or average wins per run, wherein now you have all the big names, people like, Kriparian, et cetera, who usually are on top because they're focused on that. But I feel like maybe you were just ahead of your time in the fact that you were really locked and loaded and just razor focused on limited. And I adore limited, and that's why I'm excited to talk to you about this stuff.
Sure. I mean, there were some other card games, but afterwards it was Elder Scroll Legends as well. And I actually, when I started streaming a year and change ago, I started it with Tessel. Afterwards, after like 3 or 4 months, where there was the switchover for the developer of the game from Direwolf Digital to Sparky Pants, I took a look at the other game that was being developed by Direwolf, and that was Eternal. And I dived right in, started doing that stream as a free-to-play, managed to get into Master, which is sort of like a champion rank in Mythgard. Managed to go to Master free-to-play in 6 days, and in Draft in 16 days, just grinding gold, playing drafts, etc.
How much time did you put in per stream? You say 6 days, but was it, like a solid 5 to 6 hours a day? Was it just like
3, 4, something like that?
So you're converting on disgusting win rates.
Yeah.
Yes, and I was playing Mono Fire, which is like Mono Red here, like Mono Red in all the card games, as was also said on one of the previous episodes. Mono Red is the same in each game.
Yeah.
I was to say Mark is probably just chomping at the bit to tell me how amazing Mono Red is. Go, Mark, just say
Mono Red.
Although in Heroes of Might and Magic Duel of Champions, I believe it would be Mono Inferno.
Okay, well, Inferno Red, Same.
Yeah, it's all the same thematic kind of thing. Fire burns face.
Stuff.
Yeah.
Exactly.
The same hotness.
Yeah.
So yes, there was Eternal, and I'm still streaming Eternal till this day, more than a year now. And when it comes to Mythgard, I mean, I saw a ton of people from Team Rankstar talking about it, playing it. I mean, I didn't see them playing it, but talking about playing it rather. I even opted in for the closed beta and got a key, but downloaded the game, but didn't fire it up. I just didn't find the time and or energy to do that. But when open beta started, I was there.
And you are there indeed. And I mean, you've seen the game, and you've put some reps into it. And again, an impressive run with Eternal, just coming in as a free-to-play player. And this is also a good talking point as well, is the fact that you saw a lot of success and a lot of victories on your way from essentially booting up the game on day one and hitting Masters rank as a free-to-play player, investing a modest 3 hours a day. Now, 3 hours a day obviously sounds like a lot, but in reality, many free-to-play players will never in their life see Masters champion, but let alone to hit it in 3 days or in 6 days on 18 hours of work, more or less. So
3, 4. I mean, I don't remember now. It was a year ago.
Right. But, we'll say approximately 20 hours.
Yeah, something like that. With doing like all the basics, doing all the, back there, it's called Gauntlets and Forges, which is games versus AI, just to get the cards, get some gold, etc. And I don't believe there was something like faction missions there or treat codes.
No, the treat codes are now long gone. So if you're listening to this and you're wondering what a treat code is, build a time machine, talk to me. And if you build a time machine, I guess treat codes are the least of your worries at that point.
Maybe they'll do winter solstice gifts.
Ooh, exactly. Christmas treat codes. Who knows? You never know.
Treat codes.
Rhino, if you're listening, if it's sometime around the holidays and you want to sort of send us all a nice little pack of 5 codes or 5 packs or whatever, a code for 5 packs, I ain't gonna say no.
Mistletoe codes.
Missile codes, yeah.
No,
don't send them.
No, not missile codes.
No, don't send the missile codes to Magpire, please.
Yeah, don't do that. So, how would you equate the free-to-play aspects from Mythgard from your time with Hearthstone, let's say, and your success with Eternal afterwards? Because you said that you were essentially exclusively free-to-play and have seen some decent success as a free-to-play player.
Okay, so I believe for me, and it's going to be very controversial, the most free-to-play game was actually Hearthstone, because you were able to, quote-unquote, go infinite on just playing arenas and get your whole collection just from that.
Right, okay. I mean hypothetically...
I don't know how it looks right now. I have not touched that game in a year or two or something like that.
Right. So you're saying that if you can average, let's say, again, if you're not aware and you're listening, a Hearthstone arena is 3 losses and you're out, and 12 wins is the cap for maximum value. And a lot of people have essentially surmised, let's say, that if you hit if you can do better than 8 wins, you're usually coming out ahead of the 150 gold price tag.
Yeah, it was 7 or 8 wins, something like that.
Yeah, so if you hit that 7.5 or 8 win threshold, you're getting more than the value of the gold that you went in. So that's when someone says going infinite, it means that the value that you're getting back from your investment is above what you're putting in. So you're essentially constantly making back what you're playing and playing for free. So that's what going infinite is, just for those wondering.
Yes. Speaking of Eternal, I mean, I started the game as free to play, but then in that game, unfortunately, the draft mode is not self-sustainable because you play either to 7 wins or 3 losses, yes. But to be ahead of your initial investment in gold, you have to go for 7 wins. Even if you go 6 and 3, 6 wins and 3 losses, you're losing a bit of gold usually. Okay. I mean, you're getting it all in the cards you're getting there, because that is another difference between different card games. In some of them, you get to keep all the cards that you're picking, like, for example, in Eternal in Magic Arena, I believe.
That's correct.
But in games such as Hearthstone and Mythgard, those are so-called phantom drafts, or rather phantom arenas for me. And there you don't keep the cards. So that is a whole difference. But for me, Limited was always about 2 things. One of them was just a tremendous play mode where you had to scramble for answers all the time, just pick and choose which strategies to go for on the spot. You have to be very attentive, especially in games where you have signals being passed on to you, like Magic the Gathering drafts and Eternal drafts. And by signals, I mean you are not drafting in a vacuum. There is either a virtual or a physical line or circle of people in front of you and behind you who are passing cards to you and who you are passing cards to. So if, for example, the person on your right is picking up cards of one color, then you're not going to see them in your pack. So that's what signals are about. And I'm going to get back to that for sure when we're talking about Limited in Mythgard.
Yeah, no, that's something I really want to get into, and just even the untapped potential of what Mythgard's limited format can be. And that's one thing that I love, is that I play a lot of paper Magic, but I no longer play Standard. And the reason why I play Standard is it's both because it's economically unfeasible at the moment, and at the same time, it's just not as fun. Limited is a game within a game at the drafting portion as it is when you're playing. And we could actually just jump right into it right now because of the fact that there's so much to touch upon. And I know that it's a small format within Mythgard, that Limited as an element within any card game seems like just a sort of a sideshow, but in reality, it has such a vast culture that people just adore. And I myself, from a Magic perspective, only spend money to play Limited. And from a paper perspective, it is the funnest way for me to challenge myself and to really have a good experience. Now, you've played almost exclusively Limited formats, primarily within Hearthstone, within Eternal, etc. What are your initial impressions of Limited, of draft format with Mythgard?
Okay, first of all, in Mythgard there is no draft format. There is an arena format, and I'm going to tell you what, in my opinion, is the difference. A draft format is a format where you have signals, where you have people passing you packs, either virtual or physical, where you can know what people in front of you are getting. An arena format, like in Hearthstone, like in Elder Scrolls Legends, like in Mythgard, is that you are seeing a display of cards. In Mythgard, you are picking 2 from a display of 5. Then you're seeing another display of 5. Then you're seeing another display of 5, but there's no connection between them. Also, in arena formats, you don't get to keep the cards, whereas in draft formats, you usually get to keep the cards. And that is the second thing I wanted to say, what usually drives me in card games towards limited formats, because if you're playing drafts and you can get to keep all the cards, then you're building up your collection for future ranked playing. Yes?
That's correct.
Yes. So there is, I would rather call it an arena format. And in the Mythgard client, there is a sort of a duality because it is called Arena PvP Draft. But for me, these are two different things. I mean, at least when it comes to the names.
Right. And that's something that's worth differentiating. Like you said, draft usually, I mean, within the Magic client in Magic Arena, the draft that you're doing is a keeper draft. And a keeper draft means that whatever cards you select from the options that you have are forever within your collection afterwards. Now, these keeper drafts that they have usually have a price tag merely to enter of whatever gold or whatever resources it is that you have to spend to do it. However, you are keeping what you play with. But in Magic, you're not drafting against anyone else. It is a computer algorithm on Magic Arena, and oftentimes it has its own problems wherein you'll come by the third or fourth pass and you're wondering why there's still an absolute bomb of a card available. So obviously the computer is just being stupid. But in this case, like in Hearthstone, you are merely selecting from a random amount of cards that are shown to you that you do not keep in your collection. You're not drafting against anyone else. Which version do you prefer? Assuming that keeping the cards was not part of it, Caleb and Mark, which version do you prefer? Do you want to be drafting against someone else within a limited card pool, like a pack of cards that gets rotated around, or would you rather the Hearthstone format of here are 3 or 4 cards, you choose one, and we go and show you another 3 or 4 random cards?
I mean, for me, there is more choices to be made in a draft format than in an arena format. But for sure, an arena format where you get to pick one card out of 3 or 4 is theoretically easier. But for example, in a draft format where you know that people are passing you cards, you can also kind of know the metagame of what combination of colors people are usually playing. I have an example from Eternal this week even. I made an experiment during one of my streams. I said at the beginning of a draft, okay, I believe that this 2-color combination is being underdrafted because people don't understand the synergies within it. So whatever I open, I am going to force those 2 colors. I'm going to try to get all the synergistic cards in those 2 colors, and we're going to see what the results are. And one result was 7 wins, 2 losses. Then afterwards, there was another draft, 7 wins, 1 loss, where the cards that usually I got in last picks, which is like very late when you are only choosing 1 card out of 3 or 2 or 1 even, whereas in the beginning you're choosing 1 from 12 at the beginning of a pack. So there are much more choices and many more choices and many more considerations in a draft. Arena is much more leisurely, so to say, because you're choosing which card is best out of the display, or 2 cards are the best out of the display, and you midway through, at the beginning, you're choosing the most powerful cards, right? And choosing which colors to go for in case of Mythgard. But then you're just, later in the second half, you're just filling the holes in your curve, in your mana curve. So if you're missing 3 drops, you're picking up cards that cost 3, more higher than you would otherwise, etc., etc. But an arena, for me, is an easier mode.
Okay.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I've only known arena mode. To be honest, I've never really done the draft mode, and I think the draft mode is a lot harder to achieve on an online client, right? Because you'd have to get a lot of people together in one spot to do the passing, to do a digital pass, which would be kind of really difficult to do. You'd have to like group in draft sessions, which seems like a lot more inconvenient than just doing the arena style. But
in Eternal, there is something called the asynchronous draft, where the packs you are getting were previously drafted from, but they are saving it somewhere on their server, let's say, and they are then sending them over to you.
That's interesting.
So it is an asynchronous draft, and you're getting paired with people with I don't know their algorithm, but not exactly ones that were feeding you, not necessarily the ones you were feeding, etc., etc.
I really like that strategy or that element to it, because when you're sitting across, I mean, the only time I really draft where you're picking from other human beings who are making their own selections is when I'm sitting across a table from, it's a pod of 8 people and you're passing it around. And that is part of the game element to it, where you are not only assessing the strategies based on what you want to build, but you also have to understand what that current microeconomy is, what people want, and what the meta is within that pod, where you might make a pass around the table with a pack of cards, and if you say if it comes around and there's like 4 or 5 cards left, but you see a color or a faction that is a card within that faction that's actually a pretty decent card, you could probably assume that nobody's taking those colors. So then you have to sort of adjust your selection process to maybe bank on the fact that that's a wide open color, and then you have 2 or 3 other packs to open down the road, so that might be in your benefit as people continue to pass cards to you. I think that's in my opinion, that's what I prefer. Is I like that because there is a certain thrill to it and a challenge of actually assessing what's going on and just and selecting cards. I mean, sometimes the strategy is not to select a bad card in your color, but a good card not in your color, so that you're denying someone else an answer.
Or there is a choice whether to pick a card that you're probably going to play but will most likely get the cut, or do you go for the rare?
Oh, yes. The wonderful rare draft. Those are times when it's one of the hardest things to be disciplined about, especially when the stakes are low. But when you open your third pack in Magic, in a Magic draft, and if you're all in on red and green, let's say you're going for Gruul colors, and all of a sudden you open like this really awesome black rare, and in the uncommon slot is this really wicked removal card that would be so good. It's an insta pick if that was in your color, but you take the rare because, god damn it, you want it for your collection. It's exactly, you got bills to pay, because you know that at the end of that tournament you're just going to go to the counter and get like $25 store credit because that mythic you opened is something that they really want. But to me, that's a very extra layer to the appeal of limited, and in that case draft. And again, it's very important to differentiate the fact that there's draft, which is the cards you select are then recycled to somebody else to pick from, or arena, where it's just a random generation of cards that you then select from. But with all this chosen, or with all this essentially discussed and broken down, what is a solid strategy for drafting, for selecting those first few cards? I mean, is there a way to go? Do you just continue to pick the best card possible, or how soon should you be beginning to hone down your selection process to a particular synergy or a particular faction or color combination?
You mean in Mythgard or in card games in general? In
card games in general, and again, if you can sort of apply it specifically to Mythgard.
Okay. So for Eternal, I have written a draft guide. I mean, I have been writing draft guides for Team Rankstar for Eternal for the last almost a year, and been updating it for each new format, for each new set that has been put out by the developers. So right now, the latest one is from a couple of weeks ago, actually. And there I say that right now in that format, you, out of 5 colors that are available, you should focus on 2, maximum 3. In the first pack, there are 4 packs, 12 cards each, so you're getting 48 cards total. That is a game with lands, or rather power cards. So you are usually playing something like 27 of the 48 cards chosen and 17 or 18 power cards, up to a minimum of 45. So at the beginning, for sure, go for the highest rated cards. Go for the 10 out of 10 bombs, for the 9 out of 10 solid removals, for the 9 out of 10 flyers, which in this case would be agile creatures, etc., etc. Around pick 6 or 7 if you're seeing still cards being passed to you in a color where they shouldn't be there because they're still 9 out of 10s, that means that color might be open. So usually if you are able to just focus on one color in the first pack and have, I don't know, 2 or 3 other options open, that's perfect. But if by pick 6 or 7 you are still getting cards in, for example, 2 colors, then you are usually should be good with that. So really staying open and knowing when to pivot, when you see that the colors are being cut, is a huge skill that comes with time and playing the games.
When it comes down to it, oftentimes one of my biggest flaws when it comes to draft, and this is something that I've been very, conscious about trying to work on. I mean, my biggest flaw is not drafting the bomb rare or the expensive rare in pack 3 if it has nothing to do with my deck. But what I try to tell people when it comes to draft strategy is that you have no identity until your 6th or 7th pick. You should be focusing more on, I know it's an attractive kind of, path to take, where that first rare you draft is a pretty awesome card, and then you're kind of biased towards drafting to support that card. So you might go past what might be a better card, but is not as flashy or is not as synergistic with the bomb rare that you took. So I have always struggled with, heeding my own advice. But in reality, what you're saying is true, is that you do not have an identity when you're drafting until your 7th pick or so, where then you have to start thinking about where your loyalties lie. And frankly, this might seem like the standard, a very simplistic way to approach drafting. But for your first 5 or 6 picks, you always take the best card possible. And then afterwards, if the first 6 picks are 6 different colors, then you sort of go, because you're always going to be drafting a crap ton more cards than are going to be fitting in your deck. So it's better off to just go that way and progress after your 7th pick.
So don't pick Reno Jackson as my first card.
Because
I might get repeats.
Well, the thing about drafting like in a Highlander style with that in format, I totally get it. Like it's very attractive to do so, but there are going to be times where, for instance, like in Gwent, if Shoop is your first option, you might get, painted into a corner where you have to choose something that's a duplicate, and that just ruins everything. Because if your first pick is Reno Jackson, and for those who are unaware of what this card does, it's a card that has an exceptionally amazing effect if you have no duplicates in your deck. Yeah. Now, as far as I know, Mythgard doesn't have any of those.
Not yet.
Not yet. You're right, but I'm sure it's coming. But if your first pick is Reno Jackson, that will then force you to choose as with that in mind, which completely might sandbag you down the road, because you might be able to draft a second bomb, but if you just pass it up because you already drew one, or you already drafted one, that is completely counterproductive. I'm not saying don't draft Reno Jackson. I'm saying that if it's your 15th out of 20 pick and you can draft a duplicate that's going to be amazing, maybe you should draft the duplicate that's amazing versus potentially getting screwed down the line. I hate drafting with a Highlander strategy in mind, because it usually it sort of sways you to make bad decisions.
Okay, in Eternal, in the previous set, there was a card called Even-Handed Golem that was a 2-cost neutral, didn't belong to any color, a unit with 2 attack, 2 health, so like medium stats, and a deck building ability that said, if you have only even costed cards left in your deck, you draw 2 cards. Now, it was a rare, but you could have opened it. Now, there's a question. Do you only pick cards that cost 2, 4, and 6 and try to go for that strategy? Or do you go for your whole array of cards and just choose from the whole pool?
And this is where bad decisions are usually born in your mind, right? Like this is where...
Exactly. And this is where Twitch chat leads you astray 10 out of 10.
If there's nothing on the line, like I am not a renowned limited player like Caleb is. I am merely a scrub who likes to play limited for fun because it's just a fun format. So if my first pick is Reno Jackson, you damn well know I'm picking Reno Jackson because it's going to be fun to pull it out. And to me, the joy is not in the fact that I maybe went from 7 or 8 wins down to 2. It's the fact that when I do play Reno Jackson, that my opponent's gonna be like, "What the hell? Are you serious?" Like that to me is the joy. But don't fall into that trap. Caleb, can you please once again?
You have no idea how many meme decks I have drafted.
What is
Those are the best though.
What is the best meme deck you've ever done? Like,
oh my goodness. I believe I wrote an article about it on teamrankstar.com in my Drafting with the Stars series, where I go through each pick in each pack in a draft that I have played. I mean, there were like 3 or 4 legendaries that are very mediocre or bad or situational, and a couple of rares in, I believe, 4 colors where I had almost no color fixing, because they're like in Magic the Gathering, you have to have specific power cards with power colors, or right there it's called influence, to support all your stuff. There is no burning cards where it's much simpler and you can always play almost everything. So yeah, there were a lot of those, like either expensive or very very influence heavy or bad cards. But for each of the 1 or 2 wins I achieved with that deck, the pleasure both me and the whole Twitch chat that was watching received, that was amazing. Like those wins that I even remember I thanked one opponent because they did not concede where they knew they were dying, and they let me play another meme card to win that. Like a very expensive create 2 creatures that have stats equal to the number of spells in your Boneyard. There is called Void. So like memeness 101 or maybe even 201.
The advanced class.
Yeah.
Yes. Professor Calebovitsch, advanced class of memeness, yes.
Mark, do you have any awesome limited stories? Like, what's the dankest? Like either the most overpowered draft deck that you've ever played, and I'll share mine, but I'm sure that I want to hear what your most powerful draft you've ever done, and your most ridiculous one.
Well, I don't know how it is now with Gwent, but in early Arena, when they first introduced Arena into Gwent, Shoop didn't count as duplicate. So if you drafted more than 1 Shoop, they didn't count as like a duplicate card for some reason, which I think they do now. But when it first started, it didn't. So there was a draft where I had like 3 or 4 Shoops in one deck, and it was just absolute chaos. To be able to play that card 3 or 4 times was just disgusting. But I think they swiftly corrected that. Now you can't do that anymore. But so I don't know if that really counts as a meme, because that was more of a bug exploit, I guess. But
well,
that is a strategy.
Yeah,
that for sure. Exactly. Cheating is a strategy, not that's one that we recommend.
In my defense, it was, hey, look, they decided to not block that, so here we are. I got the choice to draft another Shoop, so I'm taking it.
So that. I mean, that could both be your most ridiculous and your most powerful deck that you've ever had. And for those who don't know what Shoop does, Shoop has the same sort of Highlander effect of if you only have 1 copy of any of all your cards, if there's no duplicates, it has like a pretty powerful effect. And this card Shoop actually has multiple powerful effects that you can choose. So it's a fix-all for many scenarios. Yeah.
Then there was the times when there was all the abilities that you could, again, you can't do these things anymore. There was that time when you could, do you remember, Flig, when you could pick up Shoop with, I forgot which leader did it, but you could pick him up like 3 or 4 times and keep replaying it. So when you combined that with being able to draft multiple Shoops and then being able to pick them all up and play them again, it was just like hammering your opponent with that card over and over again, which was just absolute disgustingness.
But that's part of the appeal of limited, I find, is the fact that you're getting cards, at least in Gwent and even in, because Gwent is different because it has faction limitations for your deck building. So when you're finding and drafting cards from all over the entire card library, you're finding and having access to combinations that you otherwise would not necessarily have access to.
That's what made draft in Gwent special. I was just gonna say, you remember because that reminded me of in Gwent when they had the special arenas where you built your draft deck and then you traded it with your opponent. You remember that?
God,
The whole plan was you had to try to draft the worst deck possible so that you would brick your opponent when you flipped. And I remember when that first came out, people didn't understand that that's how it worked, and your opponent would end up giving you like just this amazing hand because they didn't know.
Yeah. It was legitimately probably one of the worst conceived ideas ever because that was the
best one. That was my first 9-0 arena run in Gwent.
It was absolutely god awful in terms of an idea. That's when I would actually draft. I was probably the one queuing into because I would purposely draft great decks and it's like, Merry Christmas, my friend. Go on your 9-0 run.
What made that cool was that it forced you to figure out synergies that otherwise wouldn't be there. So you would get a hand that your opponent thought was, well, they're obviously bricked. And then your goal was to, well, what can I actually put together to figure this out? And sometimes you would come up with combinations that you would never think of doing that would actually end up working.
At least you knew exactly what you were playing against.
Sure, yeah,
it's true.
Yeah, pretty much.
Also true.
That also made the strategy kind of interesting because you knew each other's deck.
My best draft that I've ever had was a core set 20 for Magic, and it was just a matter of some people at the time. It was like on the first weekend of the set, and some people, there was one uncommon card called Risen Reef that was both a ramp effect. It had a ramp effect and it had a card draw effect. And it was it had a synergy with elementals, and there was tons of elementals in that set. And basically, I passed on a semi okay rare to draft the Risen Reef as an uncommon card, and I managed to get 2 of them, and managed to get a deck full of flying elementals. And it was from that point onward, it was not even close because on turn 3 or 4, on turn 4 or 5, I'd have about 8 or 9 lands out, and then just a bunch of flyers, and they couldn't do anything. That was by far the easiest 3-0 I've ever done in a draft. And it was no rares. It was all commons, uncommons. And people were like, it was a 1/1 creature that I would never attack with, and I would just isolate and protect. And by the time that they could answer it, it was not even, because they would never remove it because it's a 1/1, but no one knew the actual power level of this stupid 1/1 card. Anyway, that was the most powerful. One of the most ridiculous things I've ever done was drafting. It was in Mythgard Arena, and I'll never forget this because the person I beat, based off of like a Zmei Hydra or something like that I managed to get onto. I got a Zmei Hydra onto a Bald Mountain, and I ended up winning because I just kept recalling stuff like Wake the Bones out of my graveyard and recalling these pretty decent spells. And the person I beat, I came back to beat, and then they came into my chat and then started to sort of flame me in chat for, I won't mention names, and I do not want to mention names, but the person I beat was salty as F and decided that it was in their best interest to, come into my chat and tell me just how lucky I am and how much of a scumbag I am because I managed to outplay them based on
you?
Draft. It's freaking draft.
How dare you draft something that's playable? How dare you?
Well, I believe for that person, it was either doing that or uninstalling the game. So
yeah, and frankly, I mean,
you let them. So you saved a soul from uninstalling the game. So
thank you.
You're very welcome, Rhino. You're welcome. I just saved you a potential client down the road. But we all have these stories of these great stories of what Limited has done in terms of our fun factor. But in terms of just the appeal of it, what makes you want to play it? And like Caleb, like you said, I just want you to elaborate a little bit more, because I wholeheartedly agree with you from a level of just pure appeal, is that when you're drafting, it's not like Constructed where you are purposefully adding in cards to answer scenarios that you know you're going to be faced with. With limited, you don't know whether your opponent has answers to the problems you're presenting to them, and you're not always going to have the right answer to what they're presenting for you. So the creativity factor of getting yourself out of these jams is really what appeals to me. It's the fact that it's not easy and it's not straightforward and it's not telegraphed, because when you see your opponent in constructed burn a red and a blue gem, you more or less know what they're playing. But when you see your opponent burn an orange and a blue gem, you have no idea what the hell's going to happen, right? So are you able, Caleb, to sort of just elaborate a bit on why what the appeal is of that kind of challenge?
Sure. I mean, it's a puzzle. It's a friggin' huge multi-dimension puzzle. Also, when it comes to draft and all other limited formats, you know what's the most common answer for questions like whether to do A or B, whether to pick A or B, or whether to play A or B? It depends. And that is what's the best about it.
And sorry, go ahead.
No.
Oh, I was going to say that in constructed, you're able to play around things, and for instance, just today, I was holding on to a card that my chat were kind of going, "Oh, you should play this. You should play this." And in my head, I'm like, I am not playing this until Armageddon Angel is played against me. I'm not going to just commit this card to a board that is going to make it so that Armageddon Angel is amazing. But if I'm playing limited, I'm more inclined to slam down a more aggressive stance and a more intimidating board, knowing full well that there's a good chance they don't have an instant board wipe. They don't have a Cataclysm. They don't have a Misanthropia. They don't have an Armageddon Angel. So in those cases, you can be a little bit more risky, but at the same time, you're still not sure what the hell is coming, that is going to be, you're going to be faced against. So the uncertainty, and like you said, the fact that it's a giant puzzle makes it so much more appealing, that I wish more people would take limited more seriously, because in my opinion, constructed is great. Constructed is awesome. And there are some very phenomenal constructed players. But I think those who can regularly win in limited often, in my eyes, are the better players overall. And I know that might get some flack. I'm not saying that those who reach high ranks in champion and mithril rank in constructed are bad players. I'm just saying that it takes another layer of understanding of a game and skill to have a high rate of success in draft.
I mean, for example, in constructed, if you're playing against, I don't know, red-blue aggro, and they have a demolition highway out, you know that they have panic riders, you know they have trapezes, etc., and you know how to play against that specific scenario because you've probably played against it 20, 30 times already on that day. But in limited, yes, the uncertainty is the thing, and but on the other hand, there are also cards, I'm talking about Eternal right now more than Mythgard. There are cards that are usually more common, because commonly seen in draft decks, because those are staple in certain decks, etc. And I remember I sometimes have those phases in drafts when I'm playing against someone. I remember a game a couple of weeks ago or several weeks ago where I was playing against a player, and I was able to call out the exact cards they were playing on turns 3, 4, and 6, I believe, and the chat was going crazy because the opponent was playing exactly the cards that I was saying they would play. So that is also another level of anticipation, of feeling the flow, etc.
Mark, what's your thoughts on the skill level it takes to succeed in arena, like in a draft format in limited versus constructed? Like, is it, can you be, I mean, you could obviously be great at both, but do you think that one supersedes the other in terms of the type of player? Does it take a completely different type of player to succeed in draft? Or, what are your thoughts on one format versus another and success in both?
I think you need a better intimate understanding of a lot of the cards. Like Caleb was saying, like the more you do it, the more you'll get used to what you will probably see, because people will naturally gravitate towards combos in drafting, right? So they'll naturally want to look for cards that will pair together. So it'll be easier to kind of predict, I guess, combos. In Mythgard, it's weird because you could see a deck that has like, a bunch of different colors put together, or 2 colors put together you normally wouldn't see, or you might. One time I drafted a completely mono deck I don't know how I did that, but I did. So like, there's so many weird things that can happen. Like, if you compare it to Hearthstone, like we said, Hearthstone's a little different because at least I know my opponent's hero, so I kind of know what card pool they're pulling from, so I could kind of make a better prediction there. But with Mythgard, and Magic, it's harder because there's so many different things that could take place. It's a lot more challenging, and there's its own meta really in an arena. Gwent was a little different because in Gwent there was like a specific, like we talked about, Shoop was really overpowered in arena, and basically if you drafted a Shoop deck in arena, you have a better chance of winning than somebody else, because RNG was your friend in Gwent arena. But I think Mythgard Arena is probably one of the most difficult, and I think one of the makes it more difficult is that I don't pick my path and power till the end, right? If you pick that first, I think you'd have a better direction of how you're gonna draft your cards. But the fact that I pick it at the end makes it a little difficult for like how I decide to make my draft choices. But maybe that's just me. But I've heard a couple different feedbacks on that as well.
Yeah, I feel bad for the dude who ends up queuing into them. They got Fires of Creation rolling, and then they only end up, slamming down one artifact,
Right, or what if you picked all these artifacts and then you didn't get the choice of picking Fires of Creation as your path, It's like, what do you do now?
Honestly, that is like in draft formats where there are two two-part synergies. For example, I don't know, dragons and cards that get better when you have dragons or when you play dragons. So in pack one, pick one. Do you pick a dragon? Do you pick a card that synergizes with dragons? Or do you pick a card that is generally good in all scenarios, but not as good as the dragon, for example, or the card that synergizes with dragons when you have dragons? It is more stable. It is better in other scenarios as well. So when do you commit? That's the thing.
Yeah,
when do you commit?
That's the hard question to answer.
Right now in Mythgard, in Arena, you can kind of commit at the beginning to artifacts or to enchantments, or should I say enchantments? I'm sorry, I had to say that. Always when I'm playing an enchantment deck, I have that Dragon Age Origins voice at the back of my head.
I do that too. Enchantments.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. So at the end, you have like a 60% chance of getting that path that you want. There's 5 paths?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. So you have 3 out of 5. You either get that or don't get that. So you have to be somewhere in the middle. That, for example, okay, you have a deck with, you have a card pool that has 8 enchantments, which is okay when you have Rainbow's End. But if you don't get Rainbow's End, you can cut a couple of them and play some other cards, because you are not playing 100% of the cards you have picked, like you would otherwise in, for example, Hearthstone, which is a good thing here.
Yeah.
That there is some sort of deck building. I mean, in Eternal, and in Magic, the deck building is another part of it. So one part of limited play is drafting. Second is deck building. The third one is just playing the damn games. You can draft with or play Arena with 2 strategies in mind. So you're getting those artifacts so that if you win at that 60%, let's say it's path roulette at the end, then you are playing your Fires of Creation, you are playing all your artifacts. If you don't get it, be sure that the rest of your pool is sturdy enough so that it can stand in turn of seasons.
The best combo, like Mark says, usually you like to sort of draft and go for combos, etc. It's a very attractive thing to do when you're looking at cards to select. Finding synergies and combos is always an appealing way to pick cards. And a lot of that because the combo aspect, like you said, do you pick the dragon? Do you pick the thing that plays off the dragon synergy, or do you pick the vanilla 4/5 Chillwind Yeti because it's just a solid body to drop on turn 4, right?
Mr. Snuggles, hello.
Mr. Snuggles.
Yeah, a 7-drop 9/9. I mean, it doesn't have overrun, but it's still a body that has a relatively decent cost, and it's only a 2 mana, a 2 gem restriction on it for red, so it's not difficult to get out.
Do you go for the 5th Mr. Snuggles, or?
But the thing about it is that on turn, once you get to that and you're at 7 mana, if you could just throw down a Mr. Snuggles every turn, you're going to win. If you draft 5 Mr. Snuggles and you can get there, I mean, it's not like they're going to be locked and loaded in your hand. And to the appeal of Mythgard from a mana perspective is that your bad cards can get recycled for mana, which is great. So I think that there's nothing wrong with drafting 5 Mr. Snuggles if there's nothing better to pick. If you have a better curve all the way up there, I mean. But from a combo perspective, and I just want to throw this one little story out again. I remember, I think it was it War of the Spark or M20? I forgot which one. I think it was War of the Spark for Magic. I picked a card that's called Gideon's Sacrifice. It is a common card, I believe, a 1 mana common spell that is on its own relatively bad, but it is the ultimate combo piece for a card called Command the Dreadhorde. Now, what Command the Dreadhorde does, it's a rare spell that says, go into both graveyards, both boneyards, take any creatures or planeswalkers that you want, take control of them, put them on the battlefield, and take damage equal to their combined cost. So if you take like 10 things, the combined cost is like 30, you take 30 damage. But what Gideon's Sacrifice says is that any damage you're about to take, redirect it to one of your own creatures. So I had a little 1/1 on the board. I managed to draft Command the Dreadhorde. I got super lucky where someone passed it to me because it was a really bad card, for if you're not playing that color, obviously. And I was way behind in the game. I played Command the Dreadhorde. I emptied both graveyards, and Gideon sacrificed all like 42 damage to my 1/1, and then just won the game the next turn.
Nice.
That to me was the most.
You just cross your fingers you're not on that 1/1's Secret Santa list.
No, he was going to die to whatever was attacking the next turn anyways. It didn't matter, but it was just funny that it was like a late pack 1 draft where I'm like, I'll just take this card. Who knows? Maybe I'll find a Command the Dreadhorde. And like in the third pack, someone passed it over to me and I said, oh my God, it's happening. It's happening. And it only happened once in that entire tournament. But it didn't matter because the person I beat was like, no, that's pretty damn cool. I'm like, I know, and I lost all the other games, but it doesn't matter. That's the joy of draft.
That's the best thing to meme, right? That's what I said all the time. The best memes are the ones where you only got to win once, and that's the best part.
You just need a story, because now I have the story, and it doesn't matter because I don't remember what happened when I lost. It doesn't matter because I have this one brilliant victory story. But do you think that Mythgard has an opportunity to actually implement a keeper element to this?
I wish they did.
Keeper element is tied to the economy of the game. And I don't believe I can tell much about the economy of the game right now. I would love for this game to have a keeper draft, but yeah, that's just my personal preference. I don't know if that's achievable or not.
Yeah.
It's a tough thing to sort of break down, Mark. Yeah, go ahead.
I thought it was. I actually thought it was. When I thought someone had told me that Gauntlet was a keeper thing, and I got all excited, and then I got all the way through Gauntlet. I didn't keep anything, and then they're like, "Oh no, I meant it should be a keeper thing." I was like, well, it would be nice. Yeah, I think Mythgard has a really big core set, so I don't think it would be totally to do keeper, I don't think is totally out of its realm. But I think as we get into more expansions over the next year, I think that doing keeper draft would be really cool. And I think that more people would be more inclined to play, especially new players would be more inclined to play arenas if they were some sort of keeper situation, just to help with their collection.
Because it builds your collection.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah.
But you're drafting like so many cards, and this is the problem with it, is the fact that since it's not open a pack, and a pack has 1 rare, 3 uncommons, and 11 commons or whatever, like a magic card pack has. It's a matter of every new selection of 4 cards could be rare, could be mythic. So the price tag for a keeper draft, especially since you're drafting, I think you're drafting like 25 rounds or something like that, and you're taking 2 cards per round. Like, what's the cost for 50 cards? Of which maybe, of those 50 cards, maybe 10 to 12 are going to be rares and and mythics. Like, I feel like it's the price tag to get in would be something close to like 10,000 coin or 15,000.
Well, I mean,
coin.
It's like that in Magic Arena, right? I mean, you could spend real money, or it costs a lot of the free currency to enter. They could do something, and then even then, Magic Arena has a bunch of ones where you have to spend real money in order to enter them. So they could do a situation similar to that, where there's different types of drafts. Some you have to actually pay actual currency to enter, and others maybe there's a choice where it's at the end of this. If you want to keep the cards that you drafted, it'll cost you this much in-game currency. Otherwise, you could toss it and start again. Maybe something along those lines. So like you get that feeling of, oh, I get that choice at the end, or I don't know. Just throwing ideas out there.
Yeah, I think with the current model, it's just not feasible right now to have a keeper scenario. Just there's a sheer amount of cards that are drafted plus the price tag to equate to it being, because you also have to sort of factor in that you're going to be playing games with this. So you want the person who goes 0-3 to lose value versus the person who goes 9-0 who will gain value. So it's a difficult equation to parse out.
I think they need to be like, the reason why it's so easy in Magic is because there's so many expansions, and you have 4 expansions and one in like that aren't in rotation, right? So I think if Mythgard got to that point where there's enough cards to justify that, because if I'm a brand new player and you're 4 expansions deep into a game, that's super intimidating. But if I knew there was a keeper draft mode, I'd hop into that immediately, because that's going to build my collection way faster than if I just sat there and tried to grind the ladder.
All right, we've been really deep into limited, and the last question I want to get to before we go and discuss the Gem Wars tournament and monocolored decks is, Caleb, what do you think would be, or do you think that there's a viable chance that draft will have, as it exists right now with the format that Mythgard has it, do you think there would be a ladder for this, or some type of progression system or rank system for ladder?
I would like to thank Flake for that question. I was just about to get exactly to the ladder. There are some problems with the arena format or the gauntlet format in Mythgard right now, in my opinion, in my personal opinion, that I'm sorry to say, but I have played 3 gauntlets, 2 arenas, and I've stopped playing limited in this game, because if you're playing a draft here, there are no stakes, as one of my viewers summed it up. There are really no stakes. It's like you are playing a casual draft, right? Because for each victory, you get some coins. You don't get to keep any cards. There are no, for example, I don't know, you get 2 card packs if you go at least 8 wins. You get 3 packs if you go 9 wins. There is no achievement for going 9-0 in an arena, or is there? I mean, for example, in Eternal, there are 2 very hard, grindy achievements in-game to get. One is get 10,000 PvP wins, and the other is win 50 drafts by going 7-0. So there are kind of some stakes, or at least bragging rights over there. Here, you are getting some coins. You are getting to play that for free if you play each game at least 10 turns, and you usually are, etc., etc. But you're like getting maybe 1 card pack out of it at the end. And there is no ladder, so there is no progression, so that you can't have your bragging rights that you have achieved gold in draft ladder or something like that. So I really, really wish there was a ladder system here. Then I'm back. Then I'm back, baby, and I'm streaming 90% arenas and 10% meme decks.
Beauty. I like that. You know what we could actually do right now, right here on the Boneyard podcast? I'm going to throw out a challenge out there, rather a call out for a challenge. And I know that Hearthstone used to have a ongoing challenge to everybody saying, if you can knock out 100 wins in 10 arena runs, then that was an echelon, like a sort of a threshold.
Yeah, that was like an unspoken thing, right?
Well, people
here you can't.
Well, you can't. I don't know if you could do it here, but I wonder if there is something that you could. Well, here you can't because you're always getting up to 9. Is it 9 wins?
9 games.
9 games. Okay. So I wonder what is it 9 games or 3 losses or whatever? Or,
no, 9 games.
It's just always 9 games total. So I'm going to throw it out there. If anybody can say in 10 arena runs, what is the threshold? Is it, is in 10 arena runs, is it 70 wins in 10 runs is what that would be or equate to? I don't know, but we'll kind of, if you got suggestions, throw them in the comments of the video here or send them to myself or Mark and we'll maybe throw it.
Gladly pick up that gauntlet and play those on stream.
Heck yeah, there we go. And again, to Rhino as well.
Starting tomorrow.
Well, we're going to come up with a number and we're going to send this out. This is going to be the Boneyard Arena Challenge. And maybe we'll actually put a prize to this as well. We'll talk to Rhino and maybe they'll be able to sort of hook us up with something. But if you're listening to this, we're going to come up with a number and it's going to be in 10 consecutive runs. You need to come up with X amount of wins. We're going to publish that number. What's fair? 70? Is 70 in 10 runs fair? Or is that too much?
I believe that's achievable.
I think that's an average of 7 per arena run, which means you've got to go
7-2 per each. So you can lose like 2 games each.
Yeah, I think that's that. I mean, I want to make this hard. So I think that's 70. All right, here it is. This is the Boneyard Podcast Arena Challenge. You must have in 10 consecutive runs, 70 wins, and we'll hook you up with some prizes. That's the deal. Now you have to have these somehow certified and figured out and recorded or something. I don't know. But if you can make it happen, friends, go for it. We want to push some limited before we kind of move on. Caleb, any last thoughts on limited? Any suggestions you'd make for the format?
Oh, yeah. Sorry, that's for the previous announcement. I mean, there is one other thing that has been bugging me about the arena here. That is something that I believe everyone will have their personal feelings about that. Like, for example, if you get paths and powers at the beginning or at the end, I mean, can go both ways. But here is my second problem, one being no ladder. Here's my second problem with the arenas, okay? You are picking and choosing 2 cards out of a display of 5. That's cool. That's great because you get to have both choices. You get to see more cards, so you have a better choice. For example, maybe there are 2 synergistic cards there, so you can pick both of them up. Sure, why not? That's good. But if by display 10, let's call it 10 out of 25 or something like that, if you have settled into, let's say, 3 colors, then display 11, you only get cards in the other colors. So that's nothing. That's empty for you. Display 12, you get 1 card in one of your colors, a card in other of your colors, and 3 cards in none of your colors. But the cards you are getting are a 1-cost Zealot that is garbage, a card that is mediocre, or let's say even kind of good, like Mr. Snuggles, and 3 cards that you're not going to play. And what that leaves you with is a lot of non-choices because you're either having cards in your colors, not having cards in your colors. I mean, by pack 10 or 12, you don't want to go into a 4th color. You usually don't want to change colors, to swerve into other colors, because there are no signals coming, and the cards you're getting, aside from rarity, are random, are totally random. So I will give an example from Eternal once again, because that's the one I'm most familiar with. There is a mode there called Forge, which is sort of like Gauntlet here, which is PvE draft, or rather PvE arena there, because you are also choosing 1 card out of a display of 3, I believe. But by the time you choose your second color, you don't see cards of any of the other colors. So you get to choose 1 color in your first pack. You get to choose either your second color in your second pack or your third pack or your 4th pack, depending on what you're seeing. But then after that, you are only seeing cards in your 2 colors, and that is the only things you can choose from. So for example, here, if let's say 3 colors is doable. So if you choose cards in 3 colors and the other 3 colors are cut, then you have better choices. You have steady choices. Do you pick the 1-drop, the 4-drop, or Mr. Snuggles, for example? You know what I'm saying?
No, I feel you. I definitely feel you.
So one, no ladder, but thanks to Flake and Mark Theus, excuse me, now we have a challenge. So, yep, I'm psyched, I'm in, I'm ready to go. But the second part kind of it makes it more of even a sealed deck than an arena, which limits your agency on what to choose, limits your choices, limits your ability to make good decisions, right? Because they're totally random. There are no signals, and you are getting served all 6 colors throughout the whole draft. And that's it. Otherwise, the gameplay itself, amazing. 10 out of 10, amazing.
That's a good endorsement, especially for sure.
I think ranked mode is my big day. I think that's what it needs. If it had that, like I 100% agree with you with the whole. It doesn't feel like there's anything to play for. There's no stakes to play for, and that was my biggest peeve with like other arenas and other games that don't do that as well. When everyone always says to me, "Oh, you always play constructed. Why don't you ever? Oh, you're frustrated with constructed. Why don't you play a different mode? Play arena." I don't want to play arena because there's no point. I could play arena, sure, but the fun for me is climbing a ladder, and if that doesn't exist, then there's no reason for me to play that mode. That's how I always felt. So if they added that in, I would totally play more draft because I think draft is fun, but I want a reason to do it.
Hear, hear.
Beautiful. All right. Well, that closes the chapter on limited draft. We have a little time left to just jump in real quick on Mark. Could you just confirm the date? Is it November 17th?
November 17th.
Is the Gem Wars. This is another 98.3 media events that are putting on another tournament for Mythgard. So make sure that you guys can go ahead and sign up for that real quick. Basically, it's another tournament, free to enter. We've got some small stakes on this one. It's not as big as the Moonlight Masquerade, but it is just as fun. This time, you have to bring a deck that is only 1 color. This is a mono-colored jamboree, as we'll say, and that's basically how that goes. So again, prizes to be won, free entry. I myself will be playing, I believe. Mark will be sort of handling the administrative role of this one. But I want to ask you guys quickly before we move on to the mailbag. We've got a few minutes here for this, but Caleb, I want to ask you, if you were to bring a monocolored deck, what is the monocolored deck that you would bring, and what do you feel is the deck or the color best suited in a monocolored environment to win it all?
So you're saying we're gonna fight mono, right?
Yes, mono.
Mono. Yes.
Yes. Okay. I truly believe I would pick one deck that I have played, yes, on one of my streams, where I had some wine left over, and I thought to myself, yes, let's play mono-red vampires.
Yeah, I thought about that one too, actually. I almost played that against you today.
I'm not confirming, I'm not denying it was wine, but it looked red.
Oh, boy. All righty. We're having an interview with a vampire here.
Caleb's a vampire.
Yeah. So you're saying that mono red is the one that you'd bring, but would it be, do you think that the strongest, what do you feel would be the strongest contender?
No. Actually, that is probably what I would bring, but I believe the contender could be mono yellow, because it has a lot of control elements. And I mean, I have been eschewing playing yellow for the longest of times, but I believe it was yesterday I built even a mono yellow deck to start the stream with, and even without, I'm sorry to say, but even without some of the have to mythics, it was still a hoot and a half to play. So yeah, I felt like I could do anything.
Yeah,
Mark, I know that you're probably on the same train as that, as am I, to be honest.
I think the 3 colors that already have a really strong mono presence are yellow, blue, and red, right? So because blue has the Valkyries, red has the vampires, but red's also really good at aggro, and yellow just has, like, I mean, you saw today on your stream, Flake, mono yellow in a mono environment was just so powerful, but that's because mono yellow is already a pretty strong meta deck to begin with. If you pack a mono yellow deck full of mythics, oh my god, you're like almost unstoppable. So I really think we're going to see a lot of yellow, and I think yellow has probably the best chance to. I hope I didn't say this and everyone's going to just play yellow, but I think yellow has probably the best chance.
Okay, Mark, what do you have as your anti-mono yellow deck?
Oh, that's the thing, right?
Right, that's what we're going to answer.
Let's get
so
the goods out.
The anti-mono yellow, and I think Flake can attest this as well. I think you had even said, Flake, when you were playing your mono yellow, that you were afraid of blue and red, right? So red, the reason why you'd be afraid of that is because yellow has so much control, it's a little bit slower, and if you were up against a mono red rush, they would be able to probably take you out before you're able to get anything going if you didn't have a good hand. But on the counter to that, blue has a lot of the counters for wide board sweeps that yellow that you have to take care of for yellow, right? So you have Cataclysm and Thunderclap and all those cards that can clear the way for you and get all that junk that yellow is going to throw out there. And then I would also say just yellow against yellow is probably the toughest matchup for you, because if you're playing against your own thing, that's a long game, man. That's a really long
Get
control
a refill
game.
on your coffee.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Buckle in.
That would, those matches, the sponsors will get their money's worth if their logo's on that match. Yellow on yellow is usually long-winded game.
I'm going to say the dark horse is going to be mono purple. And I say that because I've toyed around with it a little bit. And mono purple is really interesting once you get into late game, because there's so many large units that create items that are very good, like the cloak. You have all the spears running around. It just has a way of generating a lot of answers later in the game. So I think mono purple is going to be the sleeper hit and the dark horse of the whole thing.
I tend to agree with you on that. In terms of purple, it might sneak up and catch people, because I think it's the color that the fewest out there can really know how to beat and know how to navigate and know how to pilot. So there might be a handful of people who bring mono purple thinking that they're being a little bit sneaky and being funny because it's not the best, but if there are people who just do not know how to deal with purple, I think that purple is going to have be more successful than people think. But I think, like the both of you, I think that mono yellow has the best late game in the entire tournament. Now, I have said it many times. I said that red has everything. It has card draw, it has spot removal, it has board presence, it has life gain, it has so much that going for it, but it does not have big dudes other than, I guess, Mr. Snuggles. Yeah. So a yellow deck that can withstand that initial storm. Again, like you said, I was afraid today. I played a lot of mono yellow today to practice for this tournament, and my biggest fear were things like were speedways, blackened Jotuns, and Hyperboreans. And the reason why was because I play a lot of snakes for value, and Hyperboreans don't give a shit about your snakes. They do not care. They will stomp on them and punch you in the face.
And also, if you played against another yellow, you'd be going up against possibly Anteater or whatever it is there, the Enchantment Eater. That would get rid of all your snakes and all that junk.
Yeah. So there's plenty to worry about. My thought process is that mono yellow will not be the most represented. I feel like red and blue will get a lot of love, green as well. However, I feel like yellow is going to have the best win rate out of the entire tournament.
Well, maybe we can get Corey to do another poll. And
he will.
Out. Yeah.
Nope. Big ups to Corey Millhouse again, who does a lot of statistics and bookkeeping for all these tournaments. So that does it for our. Before we, I guess, turn into the mailbag, and Caleb, I've got some questions from the community, but before we get to the mailbag, we're just going to hear some words from our sponsor, Inked Gaming.
This episode of the Boneyard Podcast is brought to you by Inked Gaming. If you're looking for a one-stop shop for gaming accessories, we suggest heading over to inkedgaming.com. Inked Gaming features both custom and store art playmats, dice bags, PC gaming mouse pads, and tons more. Recently, Inked has added a stitched option on playmats and mouse pads to provide even more durability and uniqueness to your game. Use the code TRS12 at checkout and get 12% off your order today. Play your games with your style at inkedgaming.com.
All right, every episode we do hit the mailbag. This is where we read your questions, your comments, your suggestions aimed at Mark or myself, and most usually they're aimed at our guest. This time it's Calebovitsch, who has has sort of just blessed us with all his awesome knowledge of the limited format and his card game history. Now, are you ready for this, Caleb? We've got some questions for you from the community. Well, it doesn't matter. It does not matter. So I'm glad that you read you read the notes coming into this. It does not matter. All right, here we go. First question is actually from Benzi on Reddit, and he asks, how do you feel about no direct or instant speed interaction with your opponent on their turn?
I mean, I'm very familiar to it, playing games such as, having played games such as Hearthstone and Elder Scrolls Legends. It usually makes the turns go faster because you're not waiting on your opponent, etc., etc. So, I mean, I enjoy many games. So if a game gives me that mode, sure, I'm all for it. If a game does not have that mode of interaction during your opponent's turn, I'm all for it. I just like games. That's all. Right.
I feel every game has its own, unique aspect of it, or something that might not be part of the game. Like Magic has Magic and Teppen allows you to sort of have this stack scenario of instant speed stuff. But let's go to the next question. This is from Dan the Meek, also from Reddit. It says, what elements of Eternal do you wish to see implemented in Mythgard? And what parts of Eternal do you hope Mythgard just avoids?
Okay, so from Mythgard, Eternal to Mythgard, I would like this game to also have asynchronous drafts, for sure, 10 out of 10. So not really arenas, but drafts. Where you have a pack that consists of a rare or a mythic, a couple of uncommons, and like 10 commons or something like that. And it is asynchronous, so it does not matter. You don't have to have like literally 8, 10 people at that moment playing that game. But these packs, these choices are first up generated by the developers at the beginning of a format. And then as the players choose the cards themselves, that data is then the base of all the packs in the asynchronous draft, so that you have your signals, that you can take a look at what cards are there, what cards are missing, and that you know which colors you can go for, try to go for, what strategies, what synergies, etc., etc. What don't I want from Eternal is the rather lacking communication from the developers to us, the community. But so far, I'm very optimistic here because, the rhinos are always there. They are listening. They are watching, or they're just listening and reading. And we have feedback from the rhinos. We can talk to them on Discord almost every day. So there is that. Whereas, for example, in Eternal, they said that we would have a new expansion. They said when, like 2 days before. They didn't say at what hour, and no one knew. We were just guessing, and none of us guessed correctly. so
chaos.
I wish the lack of communication didn't come here, but I'm optimistic so far.
Perfect. Yeah. Well, there's nothing to sort of suggest that might be creeping in. They've been very transparent and up for.
Exactly. Like the best.
All right. Next one is from Manted Man through Discord, and Manted asks to you, Caleb. You're really into the lore, so I wanted to know, what is your favorite faction or sub-faction from a story standpoint? And also follow up on that was, what mythos not currently represented in Mythgard is one that you'd like to see?
That's a very interesting question, the Manted Man.
Manted Man also self-proclaimed most attractive human being over the height of 6'9", apparently, according to his Discord name.
Yes.
Give me a ladder, I will contest. I mean a ladder mode in the game, obviously.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, that's what I meant, right?
Yeah.
No, I have a ladder in my room. Don't worry. As for the factions, I mean, I have a certain affinity for purple because it reminds me a lot of Shadowrun, and even on Boneyard number 8, Mr. Fu himself said that Shadowrun the RPG was one of the influences for this game. So yeah, probably that. Probably
Okay.
the sort of cyberpunk, but also magic and supernatural creatures, but also technology, hackers, stuff like that.
It has a very Metropolis style of, almost like a noir,
Blade Runner.
Yeah, like Blade Runner kind of
Yeah.
thing. Yeah, it's really cool. And it's always nighttime and it's always raining. That's just the other thing about it, right?
That's what the future looks like, Flake. Didn't you know that?
I had no idea. I guess invest in raincoats, apparently.
Or umbrellas.
So is there to follow up on that with Matt asking that, is there any type of mythos or sort of mythology that you want explored in the future that has not currently been looked at?
I mean, there are a lot of mythos over Earth's history, and a lot of them are represented here. I'm just trying to think of which aren't represented, because for green, for Vedmas and Volkovs, which can literally be translated into Polish Wiedźma and Wilk, witch and wolf. So there is that. There are the Nords. There are the Aztecs. There's everything. There's maybe no Atlantis, but I don't know if I would want that. I mean,
that'd be weird.
I mean, we already have a lot of water, as you said, in purple, the rainfall, etc. So, off the top of my head, I don't know what's left.
I don't know. If you want to talk about weird and crazy, how about Scientology? Let's have a Scientology faction. Weird stuff like that.
They kind of did touch on everything. The only one that they didn't really... I thought that red, when I first got into this game, I thought red was Roman, and then I found out that it was more on the Greek side, but those are kind of already similar to begin with. But maybe expanding on the Roman side of it would be kind of neat.
You, for sure.
Yeah, definitely goes with my theming. But they didn't really... they haven't gotten into any mythos from Africa yet, so that'd be kind of a neat area to explore.
Nice. I mean, now that I think of it, I know this has been done to death, but there is also something that is called Cthulhu.
Oh boy!
Yeah, that might be copyright. I don't know. So,
I believe it's not.
Okay, so that's more of a modern mythos that would be kind of neat to go into. But that's been done in every game, right? Hearthstone did that.
Yeah.
They all kind of touch on that at some point.
All right,
maybe an expansion in the future.
Yeah, there you go.
Well, there we go. I mean, Rhino does listen to this. I don't know if they watch us do this show, because that would be kind of weird. But, all right, here's the next one and the last one from Capper on Reddit. Do you have a new evil split personality for Mythgard? Now, you probably want to prelude this with a little bit of backstory as to what this is.
We don't have a split personality. Why would you say that?
Perfect answer to just completely throw yourself under the bus. Yeah.
No, I mean, I sometimes try and stream as Caleb. That, I believe that comes to about a year ago, where one of my viewers misspelled Caleb into Caleb. And I was just in the process of not having a name for my hooded, shadowy persona. And Caleb just stuck. So thank you for that, dear viewer. So yeah, I'm sometimes streaming as Caleb, Lord of Calebport, which is a renamed version of Argentport, a faction and a city name in Eternal, where he is doing a lot of crazy things. And if you go to Team Rankstar's YouTube channel, there are also a couple of videos where he's taking over some of my videos. So you can find him there, but you've been warned.
You have indeed been warned, but up till now, I don't think that there has been a single part of this entire conversation that has been threatening. Only informative, my friend. So again, I want to extend my sincere thanks to you, Caleb, for coming on the show and sharing with us your extensive knowledge and experience in the limited format, and as well as your experience with it in various different formats and games. So thank you so much for being on the show, my friend.
Thank you very much for having me. Been a pleasure.
It has indeed been a pleasure. Now, if anybody wants to watch you do your thing, where can they find you and when can they find you?
I'm not giving out my home address. No.
Well, I will have that printed for everyone who's listening. Don't worry about it. That's part of the that's part of the prize for the 70 and 10 arena challenge. Is Caleb's you're gonna get his address and he'll make you dinner. It's gonna be 8 courses of delicious. I'm trying to think of some. So you're
cat food.
Well, you live in Poland, right?
Yes.
Yes. So my mom was born in Gdańsk, so I do know some.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, I know a little bit of Polish, so I'm trying to think of some delicious Polish dishes that you can make for our winter. Some bigos, some gołąbki, some pierogi, all kinds of delicious. Some borscht. I don't know. I'm trying to think.
You're the best, Flake. You're the best.
I try. All right.
What was the one that the Gwencasters were making fun of you for? Was that
Kartofelki? No, there's like Placki and Naleśniki. That was one as well. Again, this is all things I grew up eating because my babcia used to make this all the time. But now we're getting way off topic.
Okay, so you can find me on twitch.tv/Calebovitsch. And could you please spell that out correctly in the description below, Mark Theus?
Of course, of course.
Thank you. Because it's better to click than to listen to.
Yes.
Yeah, go.
And
we'll have the link.
Try to decipher.
We'll have it up there. So, dziękuję bardzo.
Ja również wam dziękuję bardzo.
Taki ładny chłopczyk here named Calebovitsch who just came in and blew us all away. Thank you so much. Now, Mark Theus, my friend, the hardest working guy in CCG production. Who do we have to thank for this one besides Caleb?
Oh, we're going to thank Team Rankstar, Inked Gaming, OPC, 983 Media, and all you beautiful listeners for making this show what it is and getting us to episode 10 and beyond.
Hell yeah, that's good. Now on
Beyond.
Yes, and beyond.
Beyond. This is a pretty big one. I mean, episode 10 is a solid deal. So
episode 11's entering the void? Is that...
I guess we're into a void of space that we haven't exactly prepared for, because we thought that this was going to be like a one and done, a two and done, but apparently you guys like what we do, so thank you very much for allowing us to continue this. But on a scale of 1 to 5, what do we pick this time? 1 to 5 split personalities, Mark. How many is this?
Well, it's a lot of noise, but 5 split personalities is what we're gonna have to give it.
All right.
Oh my goodness, I have to come up with 3 more, damn it.
Yeah, keep going. You got to keep going. So, Mark, thank you very much. You can catch us both on Twitch and Twitter. Myself, Flake, you can catch me on twitch.tv/WatchFlake or on Twitter @WatchFlake. And you can catch Mark Theus, the wonderful co-host and producer, @Mark Theus on Twitter and twitch.tv/Mark Theus. Both stream regularly. Thank you so much, everybody. Don't forget to check out the Gem Wars and, of course, the Winter Wonder Brawls around the corner. So we'll see you very soon. Thank you for tuning into the Boneyard. We'll be back next week. Adios.